The drive up the mountain felt endless, the road curling like a question neither of us dared to answer. Ethan had his hand on the wheel, knuckles pale against the leather, eyes fixed ahead. I tried to fill the silence with small talk, a song on the radio, the clouds curling over the peaks, but his responses were short, almost rehearsed. He used to laugh easily. Now every word felt measured, as if joy had a cost. When we finally reached the lodge, I caught my breath. It was beautiful. Cedar walls, glass windows glinting with the reflection of pines and snow drifting like ash. Just us, Ethan said softly, stepping out into the cold. No phones, no interruptions. The way he said it made warmth and chill run through me at once. Inside, the fire crackled. He poured us wine, the kind we couldn't afford before the promotions and the long, sleepless years. To new beginnings, he said, clinking my glass. I smiled, but something in his eyes didn't meet mine. His gaze lingered on the window, on the isolation that surrounded us. We unpacked slowly. He insisted on keeping our phones in a drawer, so we don't ruin the moment, he said. I agreed, though part of me wondered why he needed control even over silence. When I reached to help with his suitcase, he snapped, quick, sharp, like a knife catching light. I've got it, he said, tone softening too late. That night, as the fire burned low, I watched his shadow move along the wall. He seemed distant, lost in a world just beyond my reach. The mountains pressed in, thick with quiet. I told myself it was the fatigue, the long drive, the weight of trying to rekindle something that maybe had already burned out. But when I woke at midnight, the bed beside me was empty. Through the fogged glass of the window, I saw Ethan standing outside, barefoot in the snow, staring into the forest, unmoving. He didn't turn when I whispered his name, and though he smiled the next morning as if nothing happened, I couldn't shake the feeling that the man I'd married hadn't come up the mountain with me. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains, soft and deceptive. Ethan was already dressed, humming a tune I didn't recognize. He said he was going to the lodge office to confirm our stay details, though I distinctly remembered him saying everything was prepaid online. When I asked why, his smile tightened. You always worry too much, Maya, he said lightly, brushing my hair from my face before leaving. The touch felt rehearsed, like affection practiced rather than felt. I tried to shake it off, wandering through the cabin, admiring the old photographs of strangers who once smiled in the same rooms. But when Ethan returned, his mood had shifted, restless, sharp-edged. He kept checking his phone, turning it face down each time I looked. At one point, I caught a glimpse of a notification, a woman's name I didn't recognize. He noticed my glance and pocketed the phone instantly. At dinner, the tension thickened like the wine in my glass. The air smelled of roasted herbs and smoke. Ethan was talkative again, almost manic with charm, telling stories from our early years, the ones that used to make me laugh. But his laughter came a second too late, a note off-key. Then, casually, he said, "Funny thing about cabins like these, people disappear in the woods all the time. Slippery rocks, bad luck, no one ever knows." I froze, fork midair. He grinned, waiting for a reaction. "I'm kidding," he added, but the glint in his eyes didn't match the word. The rest of the meal passed in silence. Outside, the wind began to howl through the pines, and I found myself glancing at the locked drawer in his suitcase again, wondering what he was hiding from me, or from himself. When we finally went to bed, Ethan fell asleep almost instantly, his breathing steady, unbothered. I lay awake, tracing the faint moonlight across the ceiling. Every creak of the cabin sounded like a whisper I couldn't decipher. Somewhere outside, an animal cried. Sharp, distant, haunting. Ethan didn't stir. I turned to look at him, his face peaceful, almost angelic in sleep. But for the first time, I wasn't sure if the man beside me was my husband or a stranger wearing his smile. Ethan said he was going for a hike after breakfast, the way people say they're stepping out for air. He kissed my forehead, his lips cold, and told me not to worry if he came back late. He wanted to clear his head. I watched him vanish into the trees, his dark jacket blending into the forest until only silence remained. For a long time, I sat at the table tracing the rim of my coffee cup. The stillness of the cabin pressed against my ears like static. The walls creaked softly. The fire had burned to ash, and the only sign of movement was the gentle swaying of the curtains. It felt like the house itself was holding its breath. Then my eyes fell on his suitcase, half open, tucked beneath the bed. The thought came uninvited. Just look. I told myself it was harmless, that I deserved to know what he'd been hiding, that love shouldn't feel like suspicion. My hands trembled as I unzipped it. Beneath neatly folded shirts lay a small drawer built into the lining, sealed with a combination lock. I remembered the numbers on his old gym tag, 0712, his birthday. The lock clicked open too easily, as if it wanted me to. Inside, I found another phone, sleek, black, and unfamiliar. It lit up the moment I touched it, displaying a string of messages from someone named R. She doesn't know. Not yet. Soon. The last one chilled me. Do it before the weekend. Below the phone were printed photographs. A woman with red hair, standing by a lake I didn't recognize. In one picture, Ethan's arm rested casually around her shoulders. My chest tightened until breathing became a chore. Who was she? Why were the photos hidden like evidence? The wind picked up outside, slamming a branch against the window. I jumped, heart pounding. My reflection in the glass looked like a ghost. Pale, wide-eyed, shaking. I shoved everything back, relocked the drawer, and sat on the edge of the bed, clutching my knees. The clock ticked louder with every second. Somewhere far off, I thought I heard footsteps crunching over snow. Maybe his, maybe not. When Ethan finally returned hours later, his cheeks were flushed from the cold. "You look tired," he said softly, setting his pack down. His smile was perfect, practiced. I forced one back, afraid it would shatter if I didn't. That night, when he reached for my hand, I let him, and wondered how long I could keep pretending not to know. The morning after Ethan's hike, the air felt heavier, as if the forest had drawn closer overnight. He said he needed to make a quick run to the nearby store for supplies. Some things we forgot. I nodded, pretending not to notice how quickly he packed his keys and phone, how his eyes avoided mine. Once his car disappeared down the hill, I stepped outside. The cold bit through my sweater, the snow melting in soft, uneven patches. I followed a narrow trail leading away from the cabin, each step crunching like a question I wasn't ready to ask. About half a mile in, I saw her, a woman standing near a fallen tree, wrapped in a gray shawl, her face weathered but alert. She watched me approach, eyes sharp as glass. "You're staying up at the lodge?" she asked. Her voice carried something brittle, like she'd said those words too many times before. "Yes," I answered cautiously. "My husband and I," her lips pressed tight. "You shouldn't trust the man you came with." For a moment, the world tilted. "I'm sorry, what?" I managed, forcing a nervous laugh. But she didn't smile. Her gaze flicked toward the woods behind me, as though expecting someone or something to appear. Before I could ask more, she turned and walked away, vanishing between the trees. I stood frozen, the echo of her words lodging itself deep beneath my ribs. When I returned to the cabin, Ethan was already there, unpacking groceries that didn't look like anything from a store. His expression was calm, but his voice carried an edge. "You went for a walk?" I hesitated, just needed air. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Next time, tell me before you disappear into the woods. It's not safe out there." That night, he brought me tea by the fire, his tone gentle again. Too gentle. "I didn't mean to sound harsh earlier," he murmured. "I just worry about you." I nodded, watching the flames dance across his face. He looked kind again, familiar, almost convincing. But as I lay in bed later, I heard footsteps outside, slow, deliberate, circling the cabin. And I realized with a sudden chill that I no longer knew which stranger the woman had meant. Sleep had become a luxury I no longer trusted. Every sound in the cabin scraped against my nerves. The groan of timber, the hiss of wind through the eaves, the creak of footsteps that might have been mine or his. Ethan said he was going to fix the generator that morning. I waited until I heard the door shut, his boots crunching through the frost. Before I started searching, I didn't know what I was looking for, only that something was wrong. And proof might be the only thing that could make me believe my own fear. The cabin was small, yet every corner felt infinite. I knelt beside the bed, lifting the skirt of the blanket, and saw a thin wooden box wedged between the frame and the wall. Inside it lay a worn leather journal, its cover cracked like old skin. It wasn't dated recently. The first page began with neat handwriting. Ethan's. Anna's gone. She never listened. My stomach clenched. Each entry that followed spiraled deeper into anger, guilt, then something darker. Obsession written as confession. They called it an accident. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. No one ever really knows what happens in the woods. I flipped to the final page where his handwriting grew jagged, frantic. You can't build a new life until the old one is buried. This time, I'll finish what I started. The room seemed to shrink around me. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, drowning out the sound of the wind. For a moment, I thought I could hear footsteps approaching. Heavy, deliberate. I shoved the journal back, hands shaking, and tried to breathe. When Ethan returned, his face was red from the cold, his voice too calm. "You didn't move anything while I was gone, did you?" I forced a smile, praying my voice didn't tremble. "Just cleaned up a bit." He leaned closer, eyes narrowing, and I smelled the metallic tang of his breath, like blood or rust. Then he kissed my cheek and whispered, "Good girl." That night, I hid beneath the covers, clutching my phone that no longer had a signal. Outside, the forest groaned under the wind, and I realized the journal wasn't about someone he used to be. It was a warning of the man I was trapped with now. The storm came without warning. By dusk, rain lashed against the windows and thunder rolled through the mountains like distant anger. When the lights flickered and died, the cabin sank into shadow. Ethan lit a few candles, their trembling flames stretching across the walls. "Cozy, isn't it?" he said with a half-smile that made my skin crawl. I tried to steady my breathing, but the weight of the journal pressed against my ribs like a secret I couldn't hold any longer. "Ethan," I began carefully, my voice almost swallowed by the wind. "I found something earlier." "Under the bed," he paused mid-motion, knife in hand, slicing vegetables for dinner. "Found what?" "Your journal." The words hung in the air like smoke. "Who's Anna?" His hand froze. For a long, unbearable second, he said nothing. Then slowly, he set the knife down and turned to face me. "You shouldn't snoop, Maya. It's not healthy." "It's not healthy to lie," I shot back. "You wrote about someone dying, about finishing what you started. What does that mean?" Ethan chuckled softly, but the sound didn't reach his eyes. "You always twist things. You read a few words and decide there's some dark secret. You've always done this, making villains out of people who love you." My throat tightened. "Don't you dare make me feel crazy for asking questions." He stepped closer, the candlelight slicing his face into planes of shadow and gold. "You are crazy right now," he whispered. "You let your imagination rot everything good we have." When I tried to move past him, he grabbed my wrist. Too hard. Pain bloomed under his grip. "Ethan, you're hurting me." For a second, I saw it. His real expression, raw and violent beneath the mask. Then just as quickly, he released me, stepping back with a breathy laugh. "See? You always ruin perfect moments." I stumbled away, rubbing the red mark on my wrist, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the storm. He blew out one of the candles, darkness swallowing half the room. "Let's just forget this, okay?" His tone softened again, practiced and calm. "You're tired. Tomorrow will be better." He left me standing there in the flickering light, shaking, the scent of rain and wax thick in the air. Outside, thunder cracked like a warning, and as his footsteps faded into the bedroom, I knew tomorrow would not be better. Tomorrow would be the day I'd stop pretending to feel safe. Morning came gray and heavy, the storm's aftermath soaking the world outside. I hadn't slept. When I stepped out to breathe the damp air, my reflection in the window startled me. Hollow-eyed, unrecognizable. Ethan was already up, humming softly as he made coffee like nothing had happened. "You look exhausted," he said with false tenderness. "You shouldn't wander around so late at night." "It's dangerous out here," his words landed like a leash. I forced a smile. "I just couldn't sleep." He handed me a mug, our fingers brushing, too deliberate, too gentle. Every movement of his felt choreographed, as though he were performing the part of a perfect husband for an invisible audience. When I mentioned checking our car to head into town, his tone shifted instantly. "No need," he said. "I already tried. Battery's dead." The words hit colder than the air. "Dead? It worked fine yesterday," he shrugged. "Cold weather can kill anything." The way he said it made me shiver. I retreated to the bedroom, clutching my phone. No signal, again. I tried opening a message draft, typing, "If someone finds this," but stopped, deleting the words before they could exist. Instead, I opened the voice recorder and whispered, "Day 4. He's watching me." My voice trembled, but saying it out loud made the fear solid, real. All day he followed me with his eyes. When I washed dishes, he stood behind me, hands on my shoulders. When I read by the window, he sat opposite, pretending to scroll through his phone. The locked one. His laughter came too easily now, every "I love you" landing like a warning. By evening, I told him I had a headache. He insisted on bringing me tea, hovering at the doorway while I pretended to rest. When he finally left, I recorded again, whispering into the dark. He's changed. Or maybe this is who he's always been. Thunder rumbled in the distance, a new storm gathering. I stared at the ceiling, gripping the phone beneath the blanket. If the battery had really died, if the road was washed out, if no one knew where I was, then I wasn't just trapped in the mountains. I was trapped with him. By the next morning, the rain had returned in thin, slanted sheets, turning the dirt road outside into a river of mud. Ethan was chopping wood behind the cabin when a knock startled me. A heavy, deliberate sound that didn't belong to him. My heart leapt. Through the window, I saw a man in a ranger's jacket, his truck parked halfway down the path. A flash of hope nearly brought me to tears. I opened the door before Ethan could reach it. "Good morning," the ranger said, adjusting his hat. "There have been some slides up near the ridge. Just checking cabins, making sure everyone's safe." Ethan appeared behind me, smiling with that easy, disarming charm I once mistook for kindness. "We're fine," he said quickly, stepping between us. "Appreciate you coming all the way out here." The ranger nodded. "These storms can get bad. If the road floods, you'll be stuck until crews clear it. Make sure your vehicle's working and keep a radio handy." "Of course," Ethan said smoothly, hand resting lightly on my shoulder. His grip tightened almost imperceptibly, a silent warning. I tried to meet the ranger's eyes, to make mine say what my mouth couldn't. But Ethan's presence filled the space, blocking every chance to breathe. When the ranger asked, "Everything okay, ma'am?" I forced a brittle smile. "Yes, thank you. We're okay." For a moment he hesitated, gaze flicking between us. Then Ethan laughed, the sound bright and practiced. "She worries too much. City people, you know." The ranger chuckled awkwardly. "Well, just be careful. If you need anything, we'll be making rounds all week." And just like that, he left. I stood at the window, watching his truck disappear into the blur of rain, until it became nothing but noise. Ethan's hand dropped from my shoulder, his expression shifting, the smile dissolving, eyes hard and unreadable. "Why'd you look at him like that?" he asked quietly. "I didn't," I whispered. He stepped closer, voice barely above the storm. "Don't ever try that again." When he turned away, I could still feel his words hanging in the air like a rope. Outside, the ranger's tire tracks filled with rain until they vanished completely, and so did any chance of being found. Dinner that night felt wrong from the start. Too quiet, too careful. Ethan had cooked steak and poured red wine, insisting, "Let's not fight anymore. I want us to remember why we came here." His voice was gentle, his eyes almost soft, but the tremor in his hand when he handed me the glass didn't escape me. I hesitated. "I'm not really in the mood to drink," I said. But he smiled, that slow, deliberate smile I'd learned to fear. "One sip," he murmured. For me, I took it. The wine was bitter, metallic. I forced myself to swallow. The world blurred at the edges soon after, like fog creeping into my thoughts. My limbs grew heavy, my head swaying. I saw him watching me, his expression calm, almost fascinated. "Ethan, what did you—" The words slurred, dissolving into the air. The last thing I saw before darkness swallowed everything was his hand reaching across the table, touching mine. "It's okay," he whispered. "You'll understand soon." When I woke, the fire had burned low. My wrists were bound to a chair with rope, the skin beneath raw and throbbing. My mouth was dry, my head pounding. Ethan sat across from me, his journal open on his lap, candlelight licking at the pages. "You shouldn't have read it," he said softly. "It ruined the surprise." I tried to move, the chair scraping the floor. "Ethan, please," he laughed quietly. "You sound just like her." Anna said the same thing before she fell. I froze. Anna, he nodded slowly. My first wife, she lied. She made me believe she loved me, then turned everything sour. You women are all the same. You take and take until there's nothing left but the truth I have to carve out of you. His words dripped with calm insanity, each one measured, deliberate. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to tremble. You're right. I shouldn't have looked. I was scared. I made it worse. He tilted his head, studying me like a specimen. You're sorry? Yes, I whispered. I just want to fix it. He smiled, eyes shining with something twisted and tender. That's what Anna said too, and for a moment I believed her. He stood, moving behind me. I heard the drawer open, metal clinking softly. My pulse screamed. I needed time. We can start over, I said, forcing the words through shaking lips. No more secrets? He leaned close to my ear, his breath hot and steady. No, Maya, there are no secrets anymore. As he reached past me to lift something from the table, a gleam of silver catching the candlelight, I flexed my wrists, feeling the rope loosen slightly where I'd been twisting it. He turned, smiling that same gentle smile that had once felt like love, and I knew the moment to strike was coming. I just had to survive long enough to take it. The rope burned against my skin as I twisted again, harder this time. Ethan had turned his back, humming quietly while he arranged something on the table, the silver glint of a knife catching each flicker of candlelight. My heart pounded in my throat, louder than the rain drumming the roof. I pulled one last time, the fibers fraying, then snapping. He turned at the sound. Maya! The chair toppled as I lunged, grabbing the first thing my hand found, the broken wine bottle on the floor. I swung wildly. Glass met flesh. He shouted, stumbling backward, clutching his arm. I didn't wait to see how deep it went. I ran. The front door burst open under my weight, rain slashing across my face like knives. The forest swallowed me whole, black trees, roaring wind, the world alive with the pulse of the storm. My bare feet tore against rocks and roots, pain blurring into panic. Behind me, Ethan's voice rose, calm at first, then feral. You can't hide from me, Maya. You never could. Branches whipped at my arms as I pushed deeper into the woods. Lightning split the sky, illuminating everything in cruel flashes. The cabin in the distance, the path twisting downward, his silhouette moving closer each time I looked back. My lungs burned. My body screamed for rest, but I kept running, driven by something raw and animal. Survival. I slipped on a patch of mud and crashed hard into the ground. Pain ripped through my knee. I tasted blood, dirt, rain. For a moment I wanted to stop, to disappear into the earth and let it all end. Then I heard him again, closer now, calling softly, Come home, Maya. We can still make this work. The voice that once made me feel safe now felt like death itself. Through the blur of trees I saw a faint orange glow. Light. I stumbled toward it, half crawling, half running, until the outline of a small building appeared. The ranger's outpost. A sob tore from my throat. I slammed my fists against the door. Help, please! No answer. I pushed and it gave way. Inside, the room was dark but dry. A faint smell of coffee and rain-soaked leather lingered. I bolted the door and collapsed to the floor, shaking uncontrollably. Outside, thunder rolled again, followed by a sound that wasn't thunder. A scream, sharp and distant, twisting through the storm. Ethan's. I pressed my hands over my ears, sobbing. Every nerve in my body wanted to believe it was over, that he was gone. But even as the echoes faded, I couldn't be sure if the forest had claimed him, or if he was simply waiting, somewhere out there, smiling in the dark. The rain eased into silence. I stared at the door, whispering to myself, I made it. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of what I'd have to live with. 3 weeks after the storm, the rain still echoed in my dreams. I'd wake gasping, heart racing, convinced I heard his voice whispering from the dark corners of my room. The city felt unreal now. Traffic, laughter, lights, like a movie playing behind glass. My reflection in the window barely looked like me. Pale skin, hollow eyes, a faint scar across my wrist where the rope had bitten deep. That morning, I made coffee and turned on the television, the background hum a fragile kind of company. The reporter's voice was calm, detached. The body recovered near Pine Hollow has been identified as Ethan Calloway, 38, missing since last month. My mug slipped from my hand and shattered. Coffee spread across the counter like blood. The screen showed his photo, the same smile I once kissed, now framed between the words "homicide investigation ongoing." The reporter continued. Authorities also confirm a second discovery. The remains of a woman believed to be Rachel Calloway, missing for over 4 years. Evidence suggests both deaths are linked. Rachel, worse, the name from the hidden phone. The first wife, he said, had ended badly. I sank onto the couch, trembling. A single tear slid down my face before I could stop it. Not from grief, but from the crushing realization that I was never special. I was just next. They said he'd likely fallen into the ravine while searching for me, his injuries consistent with the storm's aftermath. I wanted to believe that, but sometimes when I close my eyes, I still see him standing in the rain, shouting my name, as if the woods themselves refused to let him go. Friends visited, bringing casseroles and soft pity. "You're so brave," they'd whisper, as though survival was a virtue, not an accident. The police called me a miracle, but miracles don't wake up screaming. They don't check the locks 5 times before bed. One afternoon, while sorting through what the detectives returned, my phone, torn clothes, the journal sealed in evidence tape, I found a small, folded page I didn't remember seeing before. My name was written in his handwriting. Just 2 words beneath it. "You understand me." My throat closed. I burned the note in the sink, watching it curl into black ash. Yet even as it vanished, the words lingered, heavy and intimate. 'Cause he wasn't wrong. I did understand him. His loneliness, his need for control, his quiet hunger to be seen. And that terrified me more than anything else. That night I watched the news again, volume low, lights off. The anchor repeated his name, his story, his crimes, until his face blurred into static. I whispered, "It's over." But the reflection in the darkened screen smiled back. Faintly, my own tired, haunted smile. For the first time, I realized escaping him didn't mean escaping what he'd left inside me. And in that quiet moment, I wondered if surviving him meant becoming part of his story forever.